Hi everyone. On my first video, I had some technical difficulties and my camera went out at the 13-minute mark. And so in that last video, what I showed you was the beginning steps for how to make an accordion book. So this is now part 2. And so with this, we have our pages already folded. We scored them and then we folded them. And then I just want to show you what you can do now with a bone folder. And so with this, this tool right here is really just to help you get nice sharp creases. And so what you do is you make sure you're holding onto your paper. You take your bone folder and you sort of hold it at an angle, and then you just run it from the top to the bottom. And then sometimes I go the reverse way. And so you would do that on every one of these edges. It would just get you nice, sharp, precise edges. So I did that on all of these pieces of paper. I want to show you that if you don't have a bone folder or you don't want a bone folder, you can also use scissors. You want to make sure first though that this won't leave any nasty red streaks behind. So I'm rubbing it on a blank piece of paper first to just make sure. So you can do the same thing. Just fold it, make sure you're holding onto the paper nice and tight. Use the edge at an angle and then just pull it down. So you could do that. You could also use your ruler if you wanted to. Again, try it on a piece of paper. Just make sure it doesn't leave any marks behind. As long as it does it, then you can just hold it like this and pull it down. And again, it gives you that nice sharp crease. So I did that on all of these pieces of paper here that you saw me cut in the first part of this. And so now what we're going to talk about is our cover. So this right here. For a cover, you need 2 pieces of cardboard or chipboard that you have cut to be the same size as your page. So here's one page. It's 4 by 6. And you'll see that it's the exact same size. And so that's what you're going for there. Once you have that, you can go ahead and pick out the paper that you want to use for your cover. And so this is paper I have left over from something else that I was working on. And you can find this at Michael's in the scrapbooking section. So we can see that this print right here has a direction. It faces up. If all of these were turned in different directions, if all the cats were rotated, then it wouldn't matter so much, but we know that this way is up. So when I turn it upside down, because we're going to do all of our markings on this, I'm just going to put a little arrow to just sort of remind me of the direction these cats go. Because if your book opens up this direction, you don't want all the cats sort of facing up. It'll be really confusing when you sort of look at your book. Okay, so we're gonna do all of our drawing on the back. I have the cats facing up. I already drew a line here, which this is just a 1/2 inch. And so we'll go ahead and let's just make sure there's enough room. It looks like there's plenty of room. So then we'll go ahead and we will draw a 1/2 inch from, let's say, this line right here. So let's go ahead and measure it. There's a 1/2, and then here's another 1/2, and let's do another one way down here. 1/2, and then because we're making 2, remember there's the front cover and the back cover. You really want to make sure that you go ahead and make the line go all the way to the bottom, because we can reuse that same line. Okay. So we now have an edge, we have an edge, and now we are going to take our pre-cut piece of paper to help us draw this. Okay, so I'm gonna hold this in the middle, and now I am just going to use this to discover where this line should be. I'm just tracing it. There we go. So this is where the cover will go, and now we're going to measure a 1/2 inch this way and a 1/2 inch that way. And that is going to be what we are creating is the border and the corners, and that's what's going to sort of wrap around the edge and make everything look nice and neat on the covers of these books. So again, we got that half. I did 4 that time, mostly because I didn't trust one of the ones I drew. This doesn't have to be as precise or as careful as kind of you needed to be on those pages, simply because it will wrap around. As long as this is nice and straight, then you're kind of fine. And then let's go ahead and do one last time. This will be to the inch, so we only have a little bit to cut off there. And one more time. Okay, so we have one cover done, or at least done for the cutting part. Now we use our scissors and we'll just cut along that line that we created. And then we'll cut that excess off. Okay, so there's the first one. And then let's go ahead and do the second one. So again, let's check and just see which way this goes. Okay, so this is up. So I'll turn it over again and just make sure I know which direction up is. And now I will take my second already pre-cut piece here. And so we know this is up, and so we're gonna already use this line we already have drawn, and now we're gonna create the other one, the 1/2 inch. I always do 3. I'm dyslexic, and sometimes when I'm looking at the lines, I can see it wrong. So I always do 3 or 4. Sometimes you'll see me do 4 just because I want to make sure. Okay, so we have that top line, we have the side line, and so now we'll take our pre-cut piece of chipboard, and I'll just put it in to the 2 edges we just created, and then I'll trace it. And now we'll just measure one more time. Okay, there's one. So we'll go ahead and cut the excess off. All right, great. So we now have our 2 pieces of cat patterned covers that will now wrap around our chipboard. So next step is just gluing everything up. We now have mostly everything we need. We have our 2 covers, we have what goes on top of them, and we have our pages, and that's all of the pieces that you need to make this accordion book. So step 1 is that you are going to pull out your glue, again, Mod Podge satin. And I'm going to put a little bit onto my excess chipboard that I have left over. Having problems getting my glue open. There we go. I put it on a little too tight the last time I used it. Okay. So I'm going to start with that. And then I'm going to use my sponge. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and load up our sponge with our glue. And you are going to paint that on to 2 places. You're going to do it onto your chipboard that you've pre-cut. Make sure you get it all the way to those corners. And you don't want to leave a lot. So you don't want all of that streakiness. So you can tap some of that off. The more lines that you have in your glue, the more that are going to show up when you go to put your paper on top. And you'll notice it's bent a little bit because it's absorbed that glue. So now we're going to do the same thing to our piece of paper. You don't want too much. And now we're going to take our piece of chipboard. And we're going to line it up with the place that you drew earlier. Roll that down. I'm going to flip this over. And then what I'm going to do is, starting from the middle, is I'm going to push out. So I'm just pushing the glue out. And then you'll notice on these corners it's not quite done, so I'll just go under and push down and put a little bit more glue there. That one looks good. This one looks like it needs a little bit more. Same thing along this edge. Just make sure that's nice and glued down. I'll look at that other side again, and that looks nice. It looks not wrinkled. It's all the way to those edges and corners. And so the next thing that you're going to want to do is have a book on hand. And so I have a couple books over here. Let me grab it. Okay, so I'm going to use this book right here. And I'm just going to use that to weigh this down. I'm going to make sure I wipe off all my excess glue. And then I will use a book to just sort of weigh that down. I'm going to put it to the side. And if that doesn't seem heavy enough, you can always add more books on top of it. You just need something that's going to push it down flat as it's drying. Okay, so now we're going to go to the next part. We're going to do that all again. So, second one. Hang on just a second. Let me get a little bit more glue. Okay. So again, make sure you get those corners. Okay, so we have that. And let's go ahead and get this paper in the same way. The reason I do both the paper and I do the chipboard, is because glue absorbs into paper and into cardboard. And so you want to make sure that you put it on both, so that the bit that dries to both and the bit that is a little bit tacky on both, it dries a little bit and then it sticks to each other. And that way it's a better sort of bond, especially when we get to this next part on this thicker paper that I have used for my pages, especially in my class where we're using watercolor paper. Okay, so again, I just need to add a little bit more glue to some of it, pushing out from that middle. You can see there's like a little wrinkle here that I'm going to try and push out with my finger. But if you use too much glue, you're going to get a lot of those wrinkles. So that's why you want to be careful with that. Okay, so again, I'm going to put this underneath a book to flatten it out. And I'm going to leave it there for maybe 15 to 20 minutes. So while that's happening, I'm going to go ahead and start gluing these pages together. So with these pages, we have left this flap. It's about 1 inch. You don't have to have it that wide. You could cut this down to 1/2 inch if you wanted to. I'm just going to leave it as is because I think it's fine for what we're doing. so the next step is we have our glue. And again, we are going to, let's see, I'm going to flip all my pages so that the pencil lines are all to the back. Okay, so I've done that. And now I'm going to put glue on this tab. And I'm going to put glue on this piece of paper here on the back. And again, we're putting it on both so it makes a stronger bond. And then we're going to snug up this paper right up to that edge. And then we're going to try and make sure that that is as centered as we can get it. Okay, so there's one. And then again, in this video, I'm not going to do it because I'm trying to do this fairly quickly, but what you would want to do in person, or not person, sorry, what you would want to do with the one you're making is, again, put a book on top of it. Okay, so we're going to do that 2 more times. Sponge that on. And sponge it on to this side. Again, get that as centered as you can. Oop. And as I moved it, you saw it shifted, so I'm shifting it back. Okay, there's 2. One last time. Make sure we're right on that crease. Let's bring it down a little bit. There. Again, you would, on each one of these seams, you would want to go ahead and put some books on top of them and let them stay. And then you'll also notice that we have one more of these left. And so what I'm going to do is go ahead and fold this. I'm doing this a little too soon. You really need to wait until yours is completely dry before what I'm doing. I'm just trying to show you in the length of this video. So what you can see is that this is no longer needed. And so we'll go ahead and just cut that off. And I'm actually, because it's more precise, I'm going to use my handy dandy ruler. Line it up exactly with that seam as close as you can. I'm actually lifting it up so I can sort of see where it ends. And then I'm going to use my X-Acto knife. We're just going to cut that off. Okay, so our pages are now ready. Let's take a look at this. I think I'm actually going to want to fold it the other way. So let's do that really quick and I'll show you why. So you want to make sure you have an even number of pages, and that's going to help you end up with your covers in the right place. You're going to want to make sure that your tabs are to the back, and so are your pencil lines, which I've just done. And now we'll see that your cover will naturally go here, right, on one side where it opens, and then the same on the other. So the only way you're going to get this is with an even number of pages. This looks pretty good for having me like rushed it a little bit. There's not a lot of stair stepping. This isn't nearly as good as this other one where I took my time and did it. But all of my pages are now together. So now we're going to do the last step, which is the cover. So these have only been sitting here a few minutes. But I'm going to go ahead and use them in my example. Again, you should really let this all dry. So what we're going to do next is we are going to cut the corners off these edges so that they can fold and wrap around. When we do this, you're going to be cutting these edges off. And I'm going to go ahead and zoom in so you can really see what I'm doing. When you cut this, make sure you do not cut on the tip. So this right here is the no cut zone. You don't want to cut there. You want to cut a little bit above it, probably where this line is. There isn't really a perfect method for this or the way that I was taught to do this. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut a little bit above that line and we're going to take a look. And then we're going to do the same thing over here. I'm gonna come, remember I told you don't cut right on that tip, you wanna be above it. So here's the tip and I cut away from it. And now we're gonna take a look. We're going to go ahead and fold this around, right? All the way. And then we're going to fold this other one and see how right there when I fold it over, this little bit gets folded over too. That means it's too, we've left too much. So we're gonna take a little bit more off. Let's try it again. 1 and 2, and that looks about perfect. So on this side, it's like a nice sharp corner. Same thing on the other side. So that's what you want to see all the way around. And let's take a look at this. That looks pretty good. You could take a little bit more off if you wanted to, but I'm not going to be mad at it. And so I'll just keep doing that. So if you were to cut right on that line, right on that edge or tip, what you're gonna see is that the cardboard is gonna stick out and it's going to, the craft is gonna be pretty low and pretty poor. So again, let's go ahead and come back here and cut a little bit more off because that was folding over just a little. Yeah, that looks good. So you're looking for almost like a picture frame or a bed sheet, a folded bed sheet corner. A little bit more could come off there. Okay, that looks good. So I'm gonna check all my corners and they all look good to me. Okay, so next step is if you still have glue, you can go ahead and come in here and dab it in on your edging that you've just made. And now you will fold the top down and you're gonna fold the bottom. Always do the one that's like across from it. And then you're gonna do the same again, like so. This could use more glue. And then I think it dried a little bit. So let's add a little bit more glue there. Pull this up. Okay, this one. And then we've got nice, neat edges and corners. Again, if something like this happens, put a little bit more glue under it. Let's zoom out. So this is what you're looking for. You start here, you cut off those corners, then you fold it so you have nice sharp edges, and this is your cover. So your next step would be to finish this one so it looks like this one. Bring over your pages you've put together, put glue here, make sure it's facing the right direction, and then before you glue it down, just make sure that all of your tabs are to the back and all your pencil marks are to the back. You would fit both covers on the top and the bottom. You'll put glue here and then glue on your cover, put them all together, right? Make sure it's all lined up together. I always look at them together to make sure it's sort of lined up and it's as close to center as you can get. Put a heavy book on top of it, walk away from it for like 20 minutes, and then you're done. And you will end up with something like this. So that's all for now. I hope this was helpful. Let me know.